Well, thanks everyone. Thanks. First, I'd like to thank Global Mining Group for inviting me to present at this event. Again, my name is Martin Provencher. I'm industry principal for mining metals and materials with OSI Soft. We are makers of the PI system for those that know the PI system. Whoops. Okay, so today I'll share with you some insights on the latest research study that were performed in the mining industry, studies that I've looked at and studies that we have performed. We'll start with a brief introduction, including a little bit of a safety share and see how technology can bring efficiency improvements in the whole mining supply chain. Then we'll cover some of the key technology topics that companies are looking at and how it can bring value to mining organizations. And we'll finally cover the #1 technology initiatives that mining companies are looking at these days, autonomous operations. And we'll conclude with some key takeaways. So today, mining and metals companies are actually, operations have been significantly affected based on the latest COVID-19 analysis by Global Data. The number of mines that were on hold due to COVID-19 was still 80 at the 17th of September, down from 1,542 on the 14th of April. So lots of companies have had to completely shut down their operations globally, depending on the areas you are in the world. And others have been struggling, staying active while keeping, of course, their employees safe. So companies are looking at ways to manage their operations while keeping people safe. And this is becoming quite a significant challenge. And that's why I think technology can help there. I mean, areas such as autonomous operations, digital twins, remote operations are definitely key for that aspect. The good news is that mining companies were already considering mine communication systems before the pandemic, based on the latest mine site technology adoption survey in 2019 from Global Data. 47% of mining companies were considering mine communication systems as their top 1 priority in terms of investment. So for the next 2 years. So operations are scattered across multiple sites, and the use of real-time operational data allows them to enable or empower their employees, even if they're remote operation, or even if they are working remotely. So, which is a very good thing. Now let's start with the safety share. As I said, since health and safety was identified as the most important priority in a 2019 OSI Soft study, we have performed another research study in 2020, early 2020, of course, on 192 mining executives from 56 different countries around the world. And it was interesting because we saw that 98% of the respondents consider safety to be an important challenge, with 64% of them considering it to be one of the most important challenges they are facing. So companies are definitely looking at ways to help them cope with that challenge. And if we look at the biggest impacts of accidents, of course, it's having people injured, that's for sure. But in terms of operational impacts, it mainly relates to cost and reputation. 58% of companies have seen effects on reduced productivity. 50% of them have seen effects on increased costs, and 35% have also seen impacts on their reputational damages. So as you can see, an accident has an impact on many different areas, and those are the main areas that were identified by the respondents. Now, by improving safety and reducing accidents, 25% of the respondents consider that the savings could exceed $1 million. So there's a great area for savings in there for mining companies. Another interesting fact is that 95% of the respondents see technology as a key enabler for health and safety. We can just think of remote operation during the actual crisis. Having access to real-time operational data remotely from anywhere, of course, reduces the risks of having people to be on site and, of course, putting them at risk. So a digital transformation strategy is definitely part of the solution. And based on the Bloomberg research that was presented at our latest PI World Conference, there's a use scale of benefits across the whole value chain that can be obtained while using technology. Just to take a few of them, sensors and IoT devices, or IoT, Industrial Internet of Things devices, can make operations more transparent and visible from anywhere, even remotely, and can help reduce processing costs down by 20% and improve productivity by up to 10%. So this is quite something, and we'll see some examples here. Predictive maintenance also is using advanced analytics and artificial intelligence is another area where significant savings can be obtained, which can represent up to 75% in terms of unplanned downtime reduction, and of course, 5% reduction in terms of budget. So technology is a game changer in the industry, and most of these innovations are related to the use of data, especially real-time operational data. And that's why we are talking about digital transformation that is changing the industry. Now let's see some good examples of successful digital transformation in the mining industry. And here I have taken a couple of customer examples that did present their stories at our events, Pi World events. So first one on the left is ArcelorMittal Mines Canada. I mean, following an expansion project they had in 2012, they were facing operational and logistical issues throughout their whole supply chain. They have a mine site, I mean, a railway system, port facilities, etc. So they used real-time operational data throughout the whole supply chain to transform and correlate all that data from different systems, of course, and then they were able to improve their planning and scheduling just by using data without additional CapEx investments. They were able to increase significantly the throughput there. Another good example is Southern Peru Copper. I mean, they saved a lot of money. They used their, again, operational data in real time to help them increase their ore milling activities, which, as you can see, resulted in significant savings. Another good example here is Syncrude Canada. I mean, they started monitoring their mobile equipment through operational data that was coming out of their mobile trucks. And they basically implemented condition-based maintenance within their operational data infrastructure. And they were able to save a lot of money and, of course, increase the uptime of the equipment. Another good example in terms of this, in this case, is in terms of environment, health, and safety. I mean, Barrick Gold, following a large expansion project they had, they were faced with more complex leach and recovery circuits. For which the operators were having a hard time to cope with the environmental regulations. So they basically implemented real-time condition monitoring, but in this case, environmental condition monitoring in their infrastructure, which led to significant improvements in terms of environmental compliancy. Another good example here is Vale in the Minas Gerais area in Brazil. They basically, again, implemented their real-time operational data infrastructure and their mines and started collecting quality data, all the data from their assets. Of course, by doing this, they were now able to improve significantly the monitoring of the quality of the production. And of course, it also resulted in significant improvements in terms of reliability, mean time to repair has reduced, and of course, availability has increased. And lastly, another good example here is BHP. They performed a successful digital transformation. They started with implementing it at their mine sites. So by the time they presented it, there were 32 mine sites that were connected. Now they were able to collect all that information from their mine sites. And of course, once you have access to all that information from all the different mine sites, from all the different assets of all those different mines, it becomes very easy to do any KPI, key performance indicators, and reporting. So those are very good examples of successful digital transformation stories. And one thing, they all have one thing in common. They all have implemented a real-time operational data infrastructure to collect all that data. And of course, collecting it is one thing, but making sure it is contextualized, properly contextualized, is also a big thing. And we'll talk a little more about that in the next slides. As a follow-up example, I wanted to share that example from ArcelorMittal Mines Canada. I mean, they've continued their journey through digital transformation. They now have implemented an integrated remote operations center that is based in Longueuil near Montreal. And that center is actually more than 1,000 kilometers away from the mine site. So now they are able to collect the information, as I said, from all their supply chain, from all their assets throughout the supply chain at the mine site to the port facility. And they have now their operations dispatcher who can take quick decisions, who's now based in Longueuil, more than 1,000 kilometers away, that can take quick actions based on real-time situations that are happening. So it resulted for them in significant improvements. I mean, they talked about a 6% daily tonnage increase, truck productivity increased by 7%, so 300% reduction in concentrator slowdowns caused by a low feed at the crusher. So very good example of a successful digital transformation. And here we can see an example of a screen that they have implemented. So their operations dispatcher can see now the whole mining supply chain in one screen. So of course he or she has access to a lot of other screens for more information, but this is just an example that was presented by ArcelorMittal that is a very good example. So once you have all that information to one placeholder, becomes very easy to present it to your people and empower your people. So now let's go into analytics and AI. So once an organization has properly implemented a real-time operational data infrastructure, well, it becomes easy to start using advanced analytical tools, and that's probably the next step that I would recommend. So with the growth of IoT devices that are being deployed globally, it becomes a door opener to lots of opportunities. According to an IDC study from January 2020 that was made on artificial intelligence, they predict that the global resources sector, which includes mining, of course, will spend $2 billion on AI and cognitive systems by 2023. So this is a lot of money that will be spent. And according to their latest study on AI in August 2020, globally, the artificial intelligence market, including all industries, will reach $240 billion by 2024. So it has begun. People are spending a lot of money in AI. Now, what I see with the mining companies that I worked with so far is that people, they have to make sure that they have the operational data in one infrastructure, in one placeholder, and they have to make sure that they have the whole context that goes with that data. I see so many stories that artificial intelligence or predictive analytics model do predictions based on correlations that were made out of wrong data or out of data that were not contextualized. And the best example I can provide is for example, in one situation that I faced, where they were predicting wrong failures to their assets, and the issue was that there was an operator that was stopping the equipment with the emergency button. So instead of stopping the equipment properly, he was pressing the emergency button and go to his break and then coming back to restart the equipment. For him, it was easier that way, but they were not capturing that context. So they were just looking at whenever the equipment is down and it is not stopped, it means it's a failure. So that's why I'm saying we need to capture the whole context that goes with that data. Now, another study, and again, looking at IoT devices, we did a study in 2019, OSIsoft did a study in 2019, and it was interesting to see that 24% of the people that were surveyed are actually using IoT devices with analytics. So this is a very good percentage of mining companies that actually started to use analytics and IoT devices. Again, once you have those IoT devices installed, you have that proper data that's being captured from those devices with its context, it becomes easy to implement and use analytics. Another good study that was performed by Deloitte this time is actually, they were saying that in order to succeed in analytics, you need to collect and contextualize all that data, but you also need to take into consideration all the different time horizons that are to be considered from that data. So of course, real-time data is one thing, but historical data is another thing, and future data is another thing. So once you collect and store all that data, and you start using all that data, they were saying that productivity increase could reach up to 10% or even 20% in some cases. So that's a very good example also of leveraging that data. Now, here's a very good example talking about IoT devices, a very good example of a company, a mining company that used IoT sensors. Those are white cylinders, small white cylinders that are battery powered, that are glued on the device. It's Wi-Fi, and those are sending 4D vibration information to their real-time data information structure or real-time data infrastructure. So basically, by doing this, this was a pilot project, but within only 36 days of deployment, they were able to save a major downtime on one of their scrubbers. So this is a very good example of a successful IoT device implementation for predictive maintenance. Another great example here is using analytics, and this time it was about the sensors themselves that were being destroyed. This is with Newcrest Mining in Australia. Newcrest has won several awards with that innovation. They basically had their crushed ore bin. They had a sensor in the crushed ore bin, and the crushed ore bin, of course, there are rocks getting into that bin, and of course sometimes the sensor got broken, so they were facing overfills of the bin. They had to empty it manually, so major shutdowns. So they've implemented, they used basically machine learning technology, and they were able to implement a model that was actually simulating the sensor itself. So whenever the sensor was getting broke, they are now able to continue operating for up to 2 hours. So it gives them the time to operate even though the sensor is broken. So that's a very good example of a sensor, an IoT sensor that gets broken, that doesn't stop the operations. For them, it generated an increase in the throughput, as you can see. So it was a very good example of a successful usage of machine learning in that case, so advanced analytic techniques. Now, what's coming next into the digital transformation journey? Well, cloud and digital twins are definitely part of it. And here's a brief overview that I'll provide you. So based, again, on another research study that was made by Global Data on the impact of COVID-19 on the cloud services, the cloud market is expected to grow at a compounded annual rate of 19% between 2019 and 2024. So if we combine it with the use of digital twins, it will definitely help our remote workforce be able to manage efficiently and lots of activities such as reliability improvement initiatives. Now, what is a digital twin exactly? Well, according to an ARC research white paper on digital twins, a digital foundation is required to build digital activities, including a digital twin. So representing a physical object digitally is a starting point of a digital representation or of a digitalization. So you need to have a digital structure properly implemented into your operational data infrastructure. And once you have that digital structure properly implemented, it becomes easy to start using it for digital twins or with 3D modeling. Again, a digital twin also needs to take into consideration real-time data. To be a digital twin, it needs to take into consideration the whole context that goes with that data and the behavior of the asset and the performance of the asset also needs to be taken into consideration. For example, a digital representation reflecting the state of an asset at a point in time in the past may provide useful information to understand what happened exactly during a process deviation or an asset failure. A good example of digital twin usage. And here we have a good example of a company that successfully performed a digital transformation journey. Of course, they have implemented their real-time operational data infrastructure to collect all their information from all the data from their assets. They then built their digital representation of their assets into their infrastructure, and they now are using the cloud and digital twins technology to to collect the information from 3 separate mines, bring it into their headquarters in Rio de Janeiro to the cloud, and now their engineers can start experimenting with digital twin models and use their even their mobile devices to access to dashboards and update. And this allowed them to improve significantly in areas such as maintenance, for example. That's what they have presented there. So a very good example of a successful implementation of digital twin and cloud technology here. Now, another aspect that executives are actively considering is artificial intelligence or autonomous operation. A study from Mining Magazine and Mining Intelligence that was done for OSIsoft in 2019 actually said that 87% of mining executives are thinking that artificial intelligence will change the way that mining companies are operating, and that is true. Actually, when we talk about autonomous operation, most people think about autonomous trucks, which is true. Based on a report from Global Data in a March 2020 report, Australia is the country with the largest number of autonomous trucks. And of course, those autonomous trucks are bringing huge value. Those vendors are saying that it can bring up to 15 to 30% of improvement in productivity, 15 to 20% reduction in operating costs, etc. So there's a lot of improvement areas that are possible. And according to that study, the company that has the largest number of autonomous trucks nowadays is Rio Tinto with 162 trucks, followed by Fortescue Metals Group with 157 trucks and BHP with 50 trucks. Again, this was done in March 2020. Of course, it's growing, but I thought it would be great to share it with you here. And now, not just trucks can be autonomous. Autonomous operation can also be done. This is a very good example we have. It's from the cement industry, but it is applicable to the mining industry, definitely. I mean, Cemex started their digital transformation journey years ago. They've implemented their real-time operational data infrastructure at all their plants worldwide. They've implemented condition-based monitoring for maintenance, for energy, for environmental aspects within their infrastructure. Now, they're moving a step ahead with using artificial intelligence, and they now have an objective to operate their kiln, which is a big oven in the cement industry, but it's a very complex oven that's operated at 1500 degrees Celsius. But they have the objective to operate it fully autonomous by 2022. So very good example here. They did a proof of concept project on the cooling operations of the kiln, and it actually has been very successful. They did it in a three-step approach. So first they looked at, and they used analytics to be able to see, are we able to predict operations using specific set points? When they were comfortable with the predictions, they looked at, okay, now can we build a model that would predict the best set points that we should be using to get the optimal operations? And when they were comfortable with those prescriptions or those recommendations, then they actually linked that AI model to their control systems so that those set points would be sent directly to the control systems. Again, this is not what I would suggest as a starting point, but Cemex, after their long digital transformation journey, they are now there today and they are now implementing it globally. So this is a very good example. Of course, they're calling it autopilot because, like in a plane, even if there's an autopilot, you would not take a plane without a pilot. So it's the same for their operations. They are keeping their operators there because they want to make sure that if ever there's a situation at risk that happens, someone is able to take an action rapidly. So in order to conclude that presentation, well, there are 3 takeaways that I would like everybody to remember. First, new technology requires data management, and a successful digital transformation will enable improvement in many aspects, from safety to maintenance to operations, as you've seen. In order to succeed, second thing is, in order to succeed in such a journey, first, you need an operational data infrastructure that allow you to collect all that information with its context and start building digital representation of all your assets. And this is very important. And then third aspect is that autonomous operations are now possible. It means, of course, autonomous trucks, but not only trucks, all kinds of operations are now possible when you start thinking about advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., etc. And of course, at OSIsoft, we strongly believe that people with data can transform their world. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks very much, Martin. And also with the Zoom, there's a little button at the bottom called reactions, and you can give claps if you so choose. So I'll give you a clap, Martin. I thought that was great.
It's okay.
We do have a question from Benjamin Sadia, who would like to ask you using Zoom, if he's around.
All right. Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's just a quick question about like cybersecurity stuff with everything going digital. I know that like with IoT devices in the consumer electronics space, there's like cybersecurity concerns. And I'm curious if like the risk of like a cybersecurity attack, or even just I guess things going wrong, yeah, like security wise, is that like priced into the way that mining companies like have to pay their insurance premiums and stuff, or is that like so far out there that it isn't, that risk isn't priced in?
You're on mute, Martin. Martin, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. So Benjamin, just to answer your question, as I said, I'm not a cybersecurity expert here, but just, I mean, if I can share what the discussions I had with some of our customers that actually have faced some of those issues. I mean, it's really a matter at this point in time. I mean, it's cybersecurity becomes like an insurance, or I mean, you cannot not consider it. You have to take it into consideration. Now, up to what extent will you deploy cybersecurity? This is really based on your risk management perspective. The risk is there, that's for sure. There's a threat out there, that is for sure. So it needs to be taken into consideration, but it can be managed properly, and lots of companies are actually managing it very properly. Of course, there will always be some threats out there, but I mean, there's nothing we can do. There are people out there that are not good. So I mean, so it has to be taken into consideration. That's for sure. Of course, when you have the right tools in place, when you have the right, like I said, I mean, right infrastructure, right tools in place, right communication systems, I mean, the risk becomes quite lower. And actually, I cannot say, we can never say there's no risk at all, but the risk can be reduced quite significantly when you have the proper tools in place.
Thanks, Martin. We have another question. We have 3 minutes left, so we're gonna throw questions at you the whole time. We got you, Martin. This is from Zoli, and the question is there a particular application that stands out as providing the best return on investment in a digital transformation?
If there's a specific application, yeah, well, of course, I mean, of course, I was talking about having a real-time operational data infrastructure. That's the first thing that I would consider. People don't realize, I mean, a lot of our customers, I mean, of course, I work with OSIsoft. We are the makers of the Pi system. Pi system is an operational data infrastructure. What I see around the companies that I mean, I've been traveling before the COVID. Of course, I've been traveling quite in all the continents with mining companies, and what I see the most is that companies are buying a lot of different software, but they're not leveraging their infrastructure that they have already in place. So a lot can be done within the infrastructure. Once you have that infrastructure in place, of course, you can do, like I said, condition-based maintenance. So most companies are still on a preventative maintenance schedule. So condition-based maintenance brings huge value. Energy monitoring, condition-based energy monitoring, and also brings huge value. I mean, there's a lot that can be done within that infrastructure before even thinking about buying artificial intelligence or predictive analytics tools. I see so many companies that are buying all those tools and then they're struggling, and then they're reaching out to us and saying, hey, can you help us? And then we realize that, okay, but have you started with, I mean, it's a step-by-step approach. I'm not saying those tools are not good. It's just that first, leverage the infrastructure that you already have in place. Most mining companies do already have that infrastructure in place. It's just that they're not leveraging on it. So that's what I would say. I mean, first, leverage your infrastructure, your real-time operational data infrastructure that you already have in place. And then, of course, after that, once you have leveraged on this, you will probably have gained lots of value. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars of value. And then, yes, advanced analytics, and there are different tools that exist on the market, but I mean, we can have that in a separate discussion depending on where you are at today.
So we got one more, which is from Bruce Smith at Enterpro. Do you know of any machine learning applications that tie back to real-time process simulation like HSC? And I wonder if that ties into your digital twin point.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, HSC, like I said, there's a lot of potential in health and safety. Although mining companies, I mean, even this is the top priority. We are starting to work with some mining companies. I cannot share that information because they have not presented yet, but I can just say that we have started to work with some of those companies. I did not see an implementation yet because, as I said, top priority, but most of the time what companies are doing is working towards protective guards or things like that. They're investing into those things. I think that now companies are starting to turn to digital technologies for health and safety, but so far I did not see any success stories or actually I cannot share any success stories that were presented because, as I said, I cannot share things that were not presented by customers before. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, I cannot share more on that one, even though I would like to, but not yet.
Thanks very much, Martin. And thank you to everyone who had a question for Martin as well.